All right, so get this right. Two ordinary teenagers from Idaho. Like the kind of kids you'd see flipping burgers after school, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Except these guys built a multi-million-dollar drug empire.
Wow.
Yeah, smuggling BC bud into the U.S. High school hustlers turned kingpins. And we got all the crazy details. Yeah, we're going deep on this one.
Okay.
Pulling from the source, including this riled show, Dempire.txt, it chronicles this whole crazy ride.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I mean, what seems like a couple of kids getting lucky is actually like a perfect storm, and
Yeah.
ambition and opportunity. And this was the peak of the BC bud boom in the early 2000s.
Yeah, so rewind with me, 2001.
Okay.
Our main character, Nate Norman, is 19, a high school dropout, stuck slinging pizzas at Pizza Hut,
Yeah.
living the dream in his mom's basement.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly the image of a criminal mastermind. Right?
Not quite. But here's what's interesting. He found his way into this world through a High Times magazine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, back then, those magazines, they were like the underground Bible for cannabis.
Yeah.
And they painted Canada, BC especially, as this like haven of high-grade bud.
And let's be real, they weren't wrong. Canada's laws around marijuana were way more relaxed, especially compared to the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. It was like this legal gray area, and it allowed a whole industry to just flourish, particularly in places like Nelson, British Columbia. High-tech hydroponic grow-ops were popping up left and right, churning out some of the most potent bud the world had ever seen, BC bud.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some small-time thing either. We're talking a multi-billion-dollar industry, fueled by high demand and, well, let's face it, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah.
Even if it was on the wrong side of the law.
So Nate reads about this green rush north of the border, right?
Yeah.
And he gets an idea. He convinces his buddy, Topher, another down-on-his-luck teenager,
Right.
to pool their meager savings.
Okay.
We're talking a grand total of $1,400 for a chance to strike it rich.
And this is where their naive ambition takes center stage. They literally thought they could just waltz into Canada, pick up some bud, and come back rich.
If only it were that easy.
Right.
They end up in this dimly lit Canadian bar, completely out of their depth, and they bump into this character. We'll call him Old Man Frankie.
Ah, yes, old man Frankie. Every good hustle story needs a grizzled veteran.
And yeah.
And Frankie, oh, he saw those two wide-eyed kids coming a mile away.
Oh, he smelled the desperation on them.
Frankie ends up selling them a pound of what they are convinced is top-shelf BC bud.
Uh-oh.
Turns out, it was the weed equivalent of a knockoff handbag.
Oh, no.
Mexican brickweed dressed up as the good stuff.
Wow.
But here's the thing. Even with that initial setback, they still made a profit back in Idaho. That's how high the demand was and how low the quality was.
Oh.
This little taste of success, even tainted, it fueled their ambition. They were hooked.
Yeah.
And so the BC Bud pipeline was born. What started with a single pound quickly snowballed. They went from stuffing weed in duffel bags to driving carloads back across the border. They started recruiting other kids from school, turning classmates into drug runners. Their fleet of beat-up Toyota 4Runners became like the ultimate symbol of their success.
It's a classic example of that seductive nature of easy money, especially for young people with limited options. Suddenly, they were living a life they could only dream of before. Cash flowing, parties every night. They had this sense of invincibility, the kind you get when you're breaking the rules and getting away with it.
And Nate?
Yeah.
He dove headfirst into this new life. He buys a mansion.
Oh, wow.
The kind with more bathrooms than you can count. A tricked-out Escalade.
Of course.
Because what drug lord in training drives a Toyota Camry?
Gah.
And he even tries to launch a rap career.
Oh, no.
You can imagine the lyrics.
I can only imagine.
It's almost tragic,
Yeah.
in a Shakespearean kind of way.
Right.
The higher they climbed, the more detached from reality they became. Their extravagant spending, this reckless disregard for the law, it was all a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And beneath the surface, cracks were starting to appear.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. This is where Topher's story takes an interesting turn.
Okay.
While Nate's out there living the high life, Topher, always the cautious one, starts having second thoughts. He sees the danger, the close calls. Like when Nate started rigging their vehicles with explosives to deter rival gangs.
Oh, my God.
He knew this couldn't end well.
Yeah, and he was right to be concerned. Because in this world, as they were about to learn the hard way, danger lurks around every corner.
Yeah.
And it often wears a familiar face.
That's like they always say, right?
Yeah.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Yeah.
And in Nate and Topher's world, the competition was getting bigger and a lot more ruthless.
Yeah, that's right. Enter Wang, another young up-and-comer in the Idaho drug scene. He saw an opportunity in their success, a chance to grab a bigger slice of the pie,
Yeah.
and he wasn't afraid to play dirty to get it.
Oh, yeah. Wang was not messing around.
No.
Instead of just trying to undercut their prices or muscle
Yeah.
in on their territory,
Right.
he went straight for the jugular. Yeah. He brought in this guy, Giovanni, basically a teenage hitman, to send a message.
It's a chilling example of how quickly things can escalate in that world. One minute, you're a high school kid worried about prom dates, and the next, you're caught in this web of violence and paranoia.
Yeah. And poor Scuzz, one of Nate's closest friends, and a key player in their operation. He became the target of this escalating turf war.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Giovanni, carrying out Wang's orders, broke into Scuzz's place,
Oh.
demanding cash and whatever weed he could get his hands on.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a movie, except this was all too real.
Yeah.
Luckily for Scuzz, he managed to escape, narrowly avoiding a potentially deadly encounter. But the message was clear. No one was off limits. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal.
Right.
And just when you thought this whole thing couldn't get any crazier, the story takes another sharp turn. Remember Giovanni, the hitman?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out he had his own agenda. He decided to cut out the middleman, if you will.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When a truly bizarre twist of fate, Giovanni ended up killing Wang. They got into some dispute, supposedly over money. And Giovanni, well, let's just say he didn't hesitate to tie up loose ends. So now, not only was Nate dealing with the fallout from the home invasion, but he's also got a rogue hitman on his tail. A loose cannon with a taste for violence and a grudge against anyone associated with Wang.
Oh, babe.
Talk about pressure.
I know, right?
Nate's paranoia went through the roof. He was already battling an addiction to painkillers after a nasty dirt bike accident.
Right.
And now he had to worry about getting whacked by a hitman with a penchant for dramatic exits. It's a wonder the guy could even function.
It speaks to the psychological toll that this lifestyle takes on people, especially young people. They're thrust into this world that they're just not equipped to handle. But what's fascinating, and perhaps even more disturbing, is that despite all this drama, their operation was still flourishing.
It's like the chaos around them fueled their success, at least for a while. They were moving more weed than ever, raking in cash,
Yeah.
living these double lives.
Yeah.
On the surface, they were just a bunch of kids from Idaho. But behind closed doors, they were running a multi-million-dollar empire built on illicit bud.
They were playing a dangerous game. And they were winning,
Yeah.
but as we all know, what goes up must come down.
Right.
And for Nate and his crew, that downfall was closer than they realized.
You know, it's crazy to think this whole time, while Nate's navigating rival gangs and a rogue hitman, the feds are catching up.
Yeah.
And they weren't exactly known for their sense of humor when it came to multi-million-dollar drug operations.
And their timing couldn't have been worse for Nate. Remember those dealers they were supplying, the ones moving their product on the street?
Right.
Well, a few of them got caught in a sting operation. And let's just say they were more than willing to sing like canaries to cut a deal.
Snitching to save their own skin.
It's the oldest play in the book.
Yeah.
And for the feds, it was just the break they needed.
Yeah.
They'd been building a case against Nate and his crew for months, piecing together this trail of evidence, border crossings, suspicious bank deposits.
Wow.
Now they had enough to bring the hammer down.
And bring the hammer down they did. We're talking a full-scale, multi-state raid,
Wow.
hitting stash houses,
Yeah.
rounding up runners, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been like something out of a movie. Helicopters, sirens, the works.
Imagine the scene, right? Doors getting kicked in, frantic phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
And at the center of it all, our boy Nate. Realizing that his carefully constructed empire was crumbling around him, he managed to evade the initial sweep, though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he went completely off the grid, like he was literally running for his life, fueled by paranoia and probably a few too many painkillers.
Talk about a reality check, huh?
Yeah.
1 minute you're a teenage kingpin living the high life.
Yeah.
The next you're on the run from the law, hiding in motel rooms wondering who you can trust.
It's the classic rise and fall.
Hmm.
And in this case, the fall was as dramatic as his rise to power. But even with Nate on the lam, the feds had effectively dismantled his operation. The raids netted them a staggering amount of evidence, not to mention enough BC bud to keep a whole colliery campus. Well, you get the picture.
We're talking 177,000 pounds of high-grade marijuana, worth an estimated $32 million. It's hard to even wrap your head around that kind of volume.
It's a stark reminder of the sheer scale of the BC bud industry at the time, and how a few ambitious teenagers were able to exploit the system for their own gain. But as with all illegal empires, it was only a matter of time before the house of cards came crashing down.
And no one gets away scot-free, right?
Right.
What happened to Nate and his crew after the dust settled?
Well, let's start with Giovanni, the trigger-happy hitman.
Yeah?
Remember, he's the reason Wang isn't around to see his revenge plot through.
Right.
He ended up getting a life sentence for Wang's murder.
Wow.
It's a harsh sentence, but it underscores the brutal reality of the world they were operating in. Even if you came out on top, the price of victory could be incredibly steep.
And Skuz and Topher, they were just caught in the crosshairs.
You could say that. Despite their relatively minor roles in the grand scheme of things, they both got hit with 2-year sentences.
Oh, wow.
It seems the judge wanted to send a message that even being a small fish in a big pond can have serious consequences.
And what about the mastermind behind it all, Nate? Did he manage to escape the long arm of the law?
Not quite. After months on the run, he was eventually apprehended. The weight of his past catching up with him, he ended up serving 12 years in federal prison.
12 years is a long time, especially when you're young. It makes you wonder what was going through his mind during those years, looking back on the choices he made, the empire he built, and ultimately lost.
It's a story that could have ended there. A cautionary tale of ambition, greed, and the inevitable fall from grace. But there's a fascinating epilogue to all of this. Nate Norman is now a free man. He served his time, got out, and guess what he's doing now?
Don't tell me he's back in the BC bud business.
Not quite. He's running a legitimate business, an air conditioning company.
Wow. That's not the ending I was expecting.
Yep.
From drug lord to HVAC repairman. Talk about a career change.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
This whole story, it's a wild ride of ambition, greed, and ultimately redemption. It makes you wonder about the allure of easy money, especially in a society that often glorifies wealth and success no matter the cost.
It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest opportunities come from the toughest lessons, and that even when we stumble, there's always a chance to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and find a different path, a better path, even if it's not the one we initially envisioned.
Exactly. And with that, we come to the end of another deep dive. We've explored the rise and fall of a high school weed empire, the human cost of greed and ambition, and the power of second chances. We hope you found this journey as fascinating as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.